All right, everybody. Welcome back, Kusama Demo Day. We have with us the one, the only Cassidy Daly from Centrifuge. Cassidy, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. I'm excited to see what you have in store for us to share with Centrifuge. I know you're focused on design and research, and there's been a lot of great design and UI platforms that we've seen today. So I'm really excited to see overall everything about Centrifuge. I will hand the stage to you. I'll jump in the background, and I'll see if there's any questions at the end. And the stage is yours.
Awesome. Cool. I will just share my screen here. Okay. So let me know if there's any difficulties here. Hopefully you can see everything all right. So I am Cassidy, and I work at Centrifuge, the team behind Altair. Altair is our Canary network, our parachain for Kusama. So I actually work on token design and research at Centrifuge. Previously, I did work in economics, and now I'm working on the token and token engineering at Centrifuge. So I'm going to jump into Altair first, what it is, show you a few slides, but then I'll get to the really exciting part, which is just showing you what Centrifuge actually looks like today. This is a demo day after all. So just to jump in, with Altair, we really want to push the limits of Kusama. So like I said, it's our Canary network. It's really where the experimentation of Centrifuge will live. So this means like the newest features, before we push them to the Centrifuge chain, they're going to go live on Altair first. Right now, Centrifuge exists as its own standalone substrate chain connected to our DApp called TinLake, which lives on Ethereum. And we finance real world assets with Centrifuge. But with Altair, the focus will be everything from art NFTs to undiscovered assets. So really letting people run wild with their most experimental financial assets. So we think Altair is really the next step of pushing what the boundaries are for asset financing. I think to give a really concrete use case here, one of the more exciting things that we have in mind for Altair is, what if you could get liquidity for your CryptoPunks? So the flexible asset financing structure on Altair will really help people do something, for example, like set up a DAO. And this DAO owns a bunch of different CryptoPunks and can pool them together on Altair. And on the other side, investors can provide liquidity for financing those CryptoPunks with something like the Karura dollar on Kusama. So that's just a little sort of example of kind of how we want to take Altair into the future. So Altair will really be its own standalone network alongside Centrifuge. They'll both continue to exist, hopefully as parachains. Altair is a parachain on Kusama, and Centrifuge chain as a parachain on Polkadot. So as I mentioned, Centrifuge chain is live. Already has over 30 million DAI of total value locked with its own native token, CFG, that's used for the liquidity rewards that you can see here. And I think for us, the most exciting part about Parachains is really the interoperability that we can have with different projects. So probably many of the projects that are speaking today at the demo day, it's becoming a parachain makes it so much easier to integrate across platforms, across products, and now across parachains. And I think this is really, for me, one of the missing pieces in the blockchain ecosystem is really having that easy ability to integrate across different projects and across different blockchains. So I think for us, becoming parachains is going to be super key, and really increasing DeFi liquidity, to be Centrifuge specific there. And for us, that will allow us to increase the access to financing for assets. So we do have our Altair crowd loan open, just to plug for that. Different ways to contribute there. So you could do it directly on Kusama, through the Altair website, through an exchange or a wallet. And we do have 400 AIR that we're offering for 1 KSM that's contributed to the crowd loan. And a bunch of other bonuses that are available. So I think our early bird bonus has probably just ended, but there's also a referral bonus and a heavyweight bonus that we're still going to announce. And yeah, I think just an idea of the token supply. We really wanted to give a ton of tokens to KSM holders. So we're devoting 18% of the AIR token distribution to KSM participants in the crowd loan. But enough of that. I will jump into the demo now and just show you what Centrifuge looks like today. Oops, wrong window. Here we go. So this is our Tinlink dApp. Right now, this is live on Ethereum, as I mentioned. Maybe I can have this look a little bit nicer for you guys. So we have over 30 million DAI in total value locked. And what that means is that all of these different pools, these are different assets. These are pools of assets on Tinlink, right now live on Ethereum. And this DAI is locked in these pools to finance these different types of assets. So let's go ahead and take a look at one of them. So this is New Silver. The assets in this pool are real estate loans. Those loans are anywhere from 12 to 24 months in duration. And you can see that if you were to lock up DAI in this pool, you would make a return of 4% for holding what's here shown as the drop token. So the drop is our senior tranche token. You can see more details on that here. So we've got the drop tranche, which is the senior tranche, lower risk with a stable return. And then we have the tin tranche, which is higher risk, which means that if any of these assets were to default, the tin tranche would get hit first. So it means that it has this variable return. But this is one of our more unique pools because it is also directly integrated with the Maker Vault for liquidity. And excuse me. What that means, which is really cool, is that we don't have any reserve that's unused in this pool. So anyone who's putting liquidity into this pool doesn't have to worry about something like cash drag. It really gives us a lot of flexibility. So what that means is that we've got this 20 million DAI debt ceiling with Maker. And we're only using 7.8 million of that. So it gives us this flexibility here that we can, that New Silver can borrow against this 20 million debt ceiling, can also take in other DAI into this pool from different investors, and doesn't have to deal with things like managing investors coming in that are like too many investors compared to assets, or not having enough investors for how much real estate loans they actually want to finance. So I think for us, this is really cool because it adds a lot of efficiency into the structure as compared to what this looks like in the traditional financial system. So that's pretty interesting. But this asset type in comparison to some of the others is maybe a little bit on the dry or boring side for some of you probably, because it's just real estate. One of the more interesting ones that I think is this gig pool together with Enbridge. They're bringing in different gig economy workers. This is a pool that just got started, so it's a lot smaller compared to the other one that I just showed you. But it's also super interesting, supporting different types of gig workers from Uber, Lyft, Instacart, etc. And one of the other projects that we're working with on this is called Willa, and they actually could finance lots of different type of gig workers. So even, for example, TikTok creators, which I think is pretty cool. And that's just to show you that, in terms of like an actual user, like the end person who's really looking at accessing financing, they're not coming here to Tinlake. It's really these businesses that are coming to Tinlake, and the end user, they don't even necessarily know that there's crypto behind this. They're just really interested in accessing this financing, and we make that available for them today. So I think for me, Tinlake is super interesting because we're really tapping into different sources of liquidity for people in the real world through DeFi. And I think becoming a parachain is going to help us realize that vision, help us integrate to more projects, access more types of DeFi liquidity, and I think is really exciting for really changing the way that traditional finance works today and how it doesn't work, meaning how it doesn't really end up giving enough businesses, especially small businesses, access to financing. Yeah, so I will just leave it there for now. I wonder if there's any time for questions that I could answer, maybe. Okay. Do real world assets include beyond digital assets? So the example here is a vintage guitar. That would actually be something super interesting on Altair. So right now, the only like physical asset that we've done real estate, and then there's also a pool for inventory. So inventory for things like Amazon sellers, as an example. So there could certainly be something like creating an NFT to represent your vintage guitar and creating a pool of different types of like vintage items and getting financing for that. I think that'd be a really cool use case. And then the other question, I think you mean like how do you do like due diligence on projects? So Centrifuge is open; it's an open platform. So in theory, anyone could come on and use Centrifuge, use Tinlake to spin up a pool and access financing. So that means that we need to have a structure that could protect people. If, for example, you wanted to invest in one of these pools, you'd probably be looking at investing in the senior tranche. And this is why we have this two tranche structure, that you're not taking the first risk. And oftentimes the company that's bringing in these assets is the one that's taking that junior tranche. So they have the risk of losing first if any of these assets were to default. We actually haven't had many defaults at all of different assets yet, but this is certainly something that could happen in the future. So really, one of the first stops there against that risk is the risk assessment itself, and that's something that I'm really excited to take forward through an underwriter token design, and I think that will be super important going forward as well. One of the other questions here is how will the AIR token relate to the current CFG token or the wrapped CFG token? So right now, the CFG token, it's a native token of Centrifuge chain. So it's used for transaction fees on Centrifuge chain, for governance on Centrifuge chain, and the AIR token is going to be the token native to Altair. So completely separate to the CFG token. And used for transaction fees on Altair, used for governance on Altair, and those could grow to be really different, although they are technically similar platforms. But it's really the same way that KSM, Kusama, is different from DOT, the Polkadot token. Really just about like, as different as you see KSM and DOT, that's how different AIR and CFG would be. So another question here is, I mentioned that Tinlake is on Ethereum. Will that be for Altair? Will it be on Substrate / Kusama? And that's a really good question. So that is the next huge push that we're doing. Once Altair launches on Kusama, we're going to be doing this huge project of work of moving Tinlake, which is now on Ethereum, written in Solidity, all the way over to Altair, written in Rust, on a substrate chain. So it's going to be a lot of work for the team, but this is what's super exciting about Altair, is that we'll be able to move Tinlake from Ethereum, where it's super expensive, can be really slow sometimes, and move that over to Altair, where it can be really nimble, super fast, super easy to use. But the work of moving it over is definitely going to be a challenge for sure. I'm not sure if I have time to jump into any of these other questions actually, but thank you guys so much for having me. Thank you for these wonderful questions. I hope that you learned a bit about Altair and are excited about it as I am.
Cassidy, we actually have quite a bit more time actually,
Okay.
So feel free to answer the rest of these, and then I'll throw in some as well after that.
Okay, cool. I didn't know how much time that I had.
Yeah, we got lots. Yeah.
Cool. Let's see. I think I covered a lot of these. Oh, have you considered using Moonbeam to bridge over to Kusama? If I'm reading that right. So Moonbeam is actually super interesting for us to be able to integrate with different projects that are currently on Ethereum. And as I mentioned, with moving Tinlake over to Altair, that's going to be a huge project for us. But for us, it's super important because we want to be super flexible with how Tinlake grows in the future. And for us, it's important to have our own substrate chain where we can really fine-tune control all the different functionality of Tinlake on our own chain. But for other projects, say for example, SushiSwap, they might not need as much of a fine-tuning as we do. They might not need their own chain, but what could be really cool for them is actually just launching on Moonbeam. And I think it's really a perfect place for them to really easily move over from Ethereum to the Kusama ecosystem. So for us, it could be super interesting to just integrate with all the different types of projects like that are going to be living on Moonbeam. So I think for us, that's something that's really exciting and why we're really happy about the work that Moonbeam is doing.
Mm-hmm. Great, Cassidy. I sort of have a specific question regarding the token research and design. Having the Centrifuge token, having the Altair token. I'm sure you've experienced looking at other models and trying to decide, what makes a successful token and what makes it integrate properly into the platform to the certain extent that, is value to everyone in the ecosystem. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that process and the thought process that you go through as Altair's coming out and with Centrifuge and why you think the token economics and the design into the platform is going to help with the success and the growth in the long term.
Yeah, for sure. So I think one of the more important things is definitely the governance. I think in the beginning, a lot of these projects aren't leaning on the governance as heavily just because there's not a lot going on. So with Centrifuge token as an example, one of the more interesting things that we're starting to see now is that the liquidity rewards that are paid out for putting liquidity into Tinlake, that's decided by Centrifuge token holder governance. And it's starting a lot of really interesting discussion over, what should these liquidity rewards be? What does that mean for, the mint rate of the token? How is that inflating the supply? How is that changing the value of the Centrifuge token that people are holding? But on the other side, it does impact how you attract the DeFi space, what return that they could get in this liquidity reward. And so I think using the token for governance has been really, really important for us and has really put the power of making those decisions into the hands of token holders. I think another big place where we're going to start to see the token used more is in things like reputation on the platform. So one of the things I mentioned with Tinlake is that all these assets have a risk, and that risk needs to be assessed. A proper interest rate needs to be set. And there needs to be a reputation of the entities involved in actually setting that risk. And so that reputation is something that we can use the token for. And I think, when it comes to something like token design, what's really important is that you're having real utilities for these tokens, utilities that are directly tied to your network, the actions people are taking on your network, and I mean, really like a reason to hold the token that's actually useful in your platform, that's actually having impact on like the people that are putting value on that platform, that are either financing assets or giving liquidity. These are the users of your system, and they need a way to actually have a say in what that system looks like and how it's used. And I think for us, using tokens is actually the best way to do that, and creates a lot of really nice, I guess, utility there, to reuse that word.
Yeah, definitely. No, I completely agree. And I sort of see a lot of projects where governance is sort of the main functionality of the token, but in the beginning, there's not a lot of they're still building out sort of the core vision that the founders had come up with, and it's a balance between we're going to develop a foundation, and then we're going to integrate the governance in with the token to sort of help the community have a say and guide where the community is going to go. But I think as more products get developed and as like little branches come out on the tree of the platform, then the community can have like more of a say through the token holdings in shaping the finer details of the project, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, great. Well, another question I have is, you have the crowd loan going on right now with Altair, and then the product is looking great so far based on the demo. I'm curious on what you're most excited about for the actual product and the growth in the industry. Say at the start of 2022. As everything continues to grow out to fruition.
I'd say, I mean, the real foundation is definitely there. And so I think we've got that first step done. And the next step is really integrating with all these other parachain projects that are out there, and really growing what the DeFi space in the Polkadot and Kusama ecosystems look like. So for us, I think that's like the next big push is like, one, bringing everything over to Altair and Centrifuge chain. And then two, like working with these other projects, sitting down and really like hashing out different proof of concepts of how we can integrate things between our different chains, and really build what the DeFi ecosystem can look like. And I think for me with Parachains, like that is what's super exciting, is that there's a lot more potential there for these integrations compared to like so for example, right now, Centrifuge chain has its own bridge to Ethereum, and it's a lot of work to maintain that bridge. As some of our CFG holders might know, it's not the most reliable thing out there. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of overhead from our team, when really we want to focus on our DApp. We want to focus on our real use case. And I think for most of the teams that are running parachains, that's one thing that being in the Kusama and Polkadot ecosystems will give, is like having a really great way to have cross-chain communication and just integrate seamlessly with all these other projects. So some of the things that I'm excited about are things like, I mentioned like connecting to different dApps that might go live on Moonbeam, connecting to, maybe different DEXs and getting different stable coins in there, maybe even like the Karura dollar or Kala dollar, integrating with those, or even using something like Kilt to sort of act as like an oracle of like proving that like this vintage guitar exists and that it's there and it's real, and this is the value of that guitar. So different things like this, I think, basically provides like a lot more possibility in what we can do as a project, by plugging into all these different parachains out there.
Yeah, no, those are some great examples, and I'm curious if you have any, recent partnerships, or have you already started discussions with working with other parachains that to sort of build out this vision?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of conversations, nothing set in stone yet, like nothing, that I could officially announce or anything. But I think one of the things that I've really enjoyed about this ecosystem in particular is just how excited everyone else is to have these conversations, to really sit down and hash out like what could a proof of concept look like? How can we make this happen? What kind of effort is needed from each of our teams to really get there? And I think one of the nicest tools that we have is just like open discords and element channels, and like just like the open transparent communication across teams is there, and people are talking about things like cross-chain communication and like what are the issues that are coming up, what are the things that we need to solve together. Another thing is like token standards. Like right now on Ethereum, that's like a pretty set thing, having a standard for the NFT. We don't have that yet for Polkadot or Kusama. I think we're getting there, but these sort of things, we're having those conversations out in the open. Projects are super willing and ready to just like put all that information out there on the table so that everyone else in the ecosystem can benefit. And I think that's really great.
I completely agree, Cassidy. Yeah, open communication and collaboration, I think, is going to get us ahead a lot quicker.
Yeah, definitely.
Great. Well, thank you so much for the demo. It's great to see Altair and Centrifuge both moving quickly, and it did look pretty cool on the design factor that I thought myself. And thanks for the details on the token design. I really appreciate that. Thanks for taking the time to come on to the demo day today. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how the companies grow out in the future.
Thanks. Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. All
right.
Thanks, Cassidy. Next up, we have Jakob Sheik, the CMO of Robonomics. Stay in the video, and we will talk to Jakob in a second.